Fingers crossed it'll all go smooth. All right, good morning, nearly afternoon. My name is Robert Woodman. I've got a funny accent. You're probably going, okay, where's he from? Someone's bound to say, oh, good day, mate. I'm originally from England. So I've been living out here in Hawaii for 9 years now on the island of Lanai. Quick show of hands, how many people have been out to Lanai? Oh, that's good. In case you need a reason to come back again, July 5th, we have our Pineapple Festival, so please come on over. Expeditions Ferry should be running a late ferry, so you can definitely enjoy the island for a long period. But I want to say, I'm looking at Jill on this one, were we the first ones to get the gold standard? Okay, so how many other hotels since?
There's a few other resorts that are like starting to implement here.
That's coming along.
The Four Seasons Resort on Lanai was our first resort to achieve gold certification for reef-friendly landscaping. So implementing all organic, non-synthetic inputs landscaping practices.
It was, yes.
So
that was quite something. I will say the very first time, I don't know if you still require it, but we had to become accredited organic land care professionals, yes. Correct? Do you still require that?
This course is in place of that.
Okay, that's good, because trust me, that was a lot of work. Did it through the Northeast Organic Farming Association. Always have to look at my notes because I always forget what everything means. So it was a really good experience for me to go through that. And then we've welcomed ever since becoming organic, and it's done a huge thing. Definitely for you guys which are looking at implementing it, I love the squeaky wheels. It's pretty easy, it really is. So don't panic if you're going down this road. A lot of times it's very easy to implement all of this. But today I'm going to talk about site analysis. Let's go to the next slide. What is site analysis? It's a process in architecture, urban planning, and landscape design where we look at the location, study it, and assess in detail before any design decisions are made. So this is the very, very, very beginning before anything is done. I spent 12 weeks at George Washington University going through this, so I'm going to boil it all down to just literally, there it goes again, 1 hour, maybe even a little bit quicker, but I'm also blending in some of the stuff that I learned to become the accredited organic land care professional. So what I learned on that course, we're blending all together. A lot of it's going to be repeating, but a lot of times, just that repetitive nature kind of sinks the information in. So let's go on to the next slide. So very first off, when you are looking at the site, mostly as a designer, but it could be anyone, you're going to do a site inventory. You need to know what's there first. So the very first one, simple walk around, recording everything that you see. Areas of concern could include the soil, the topography, plant, sun, shade conditions, building features, views and activities areas. So again, you're just getting a feel for the place, where everything is. Knowing what types of soils you have. This is something which a lot of designers kind of skip over, but soil testing. Figure out what you have, what your pH is, what types of minerals you're deficient in, what needs to go back in again. Existing vegetation can provide clues on soil problems. Look out for the plant that looks sleepy. So you got dry areas, things like that, and also discoloration in the foliage. Slopes, low, wet areas should also be noted on these inventories. Know where you're going to have waterlogged issues. Could be an AC compressor dumping water into a particular area and it's just making a really wet spot. These are all things that you can utilize in your design as well. Water bodies requiring special considerations. Obviously there's runoffs that could affect that. For us, particularly with this program, the water body is the ocean that we have right out there. So we need to always keep that in mind. Sunshade patterns. You got the north arrow, you know exactly where the sun comes up, where it goes down. So when you are doing your design on a piece of paper, you're planning out accordingly to whatever that condition is. Some cases you might not have the opportunity to go back to that site, so as much information that you can record as possible before the actual install is always going to be good. Built structures, utility boxes, power lines, septic tanks, You know, I know on Maui you guys have a lot of septic tanks in people's back gardens. You need to know where those are so that you're not sticking a tree right on top of a septic field. User spaces, views, and sensors. You always want to enjoy the view, and the client always wants to enjoy the view, so don't try and block it up. And then neighborhood and development codes. I know on Lanai we don't have HOAs as much, but over here you probably do, and on the mainland HOAs rule the roost. So you always want to make sure you're following the codes there. Next slide. Now we get into the site analysis. The primary goal is to analyze and determine actions to be taken to resolve problems and identify design opportunities for new features. Kind of sums it up in terms of what you're looking to do. So you're basically drawing out a rough guide of what you're hoping to achieve. Rainwater concerns requiring redirection or even capturing. You know, how are you going to deal with that on the site? If you look at some of these things through here, you've got the house, you know, how are you going to move that water through the site? Where is it going to be captured and allowed to drain into the soils? Planting to block screens and views. A good neighbor, what is it they say? A good fence makes a good neighbor. Same kind of thing. You want to kind of create your own privacy areas so that they don't necessarily get into your privacy as well. More sun, shade areas. You want to be able to enjoy your garden. And as Alex touched on, you know, the providing shade on the structures will also reduce down your utility costs in terms of running the AC. And new activity areas and circulation routes. My kids will tell me all the time that when I designed my garden when I lived back in the mainland, I forgot to include them. So I had to take out some of the landscape to put play areas for them to enjoy the space. It's very easy to get that blinkered vision that you're just designing for yourself or for the client. Think about who else is going to be using that space as well. All right, next one. So you've done your site analysis, you've done your survey, your inventory, you get your client brief, whether that's with the results or whether it's with private residences. It really doesn't matter. You've got to find out all of that information. Then you can come in for the more informed design ideas. So you're coupling all of this together. So it really is the starting point for everything. You've got to look at the whole picture and who's using the space, merge it all together, and then you can come up with some design ideas. Okay. Always with organics, do no harm first. Or first do no harm, I got it around the wrong way. But always go with an organic mindset with everything that you're doing. And learn to use all the existing conditions that you have. So start thinking organic, everything. Fortunately, this course that you're going through is going to be teaching you all of those mindsets so you can start coupling them together. Next slide. Learn to recognize and minimize potential harm to land use. Learn to work with existing land conditions, tree removals. How many times you said, someone said, oh, we need more sunlight. So they start cutting down the trees and they go, oh, we got too much sun, now we need to go back and plant trees. Those are some of the things we've always got to take in mind. And import in topsoil. I would love to say at my resort we don't do that. Our ownership group always has big ideas about what they want to do for the land. So I always see topsoil being imported. But often where they're harvesting the topsoil, that's also where the fireweed tends to grow. So all that material is going to start coming down to where we are. So you've always got to keep a mind's eye on it. This was a great picture about trees around Honolulu. How much does it cause in savings, whether it's CO2 reduction, stormwater runoff. Honolulu is a concrete jungle. When that rain comes down and it comes down hard, trees will slow down the rate that the water will hit the ground, so they're definitely of a benefit. So you don't want to be cutting down your trees because now you have to deal with all this runoff that's going to start happening. Property values. I did 4 episodes of Curb Appeal when I lived back on the mainland, and that was all about increasing your property value. It's kind of funny to be on HGTV and see myself. But you're looking at that Curb Appeal. What is a landscape going to do to help to resell that property for the owner? These are all things you want to keep those big mature trees. Air quality improvements, various other things, but you can see it's It's saving potentially the city of Honolulu $3.9 million a year in various different things. So they are definitely assets to be enjoyed. I'm fortunate that our owner, Fulanai, doesn't like to cut down trees unless he really has to. He understands that, you know, it's like having equity to start a business. You want to have those trees there. It really helps with the overall design. The actual ground plane might be new, but having those bigger trees there gives the landscape an aged feel. Next slide. I love this picture. This is one which I used back in George Washington University. How many times have we gone in and a client says, let's cut down that tree? And then when you do cut it down, you realize it was there for a purpose. It was blocking a view. Whether it's a neighbor's house, you know, they might be peering straight into where you're sitting on the patio. With this case, in that picture, is some sort of industrial plant that's right behind it. You know, trees are there sometimes to screen views, and you've got to make sure you know what it's there for before you go in and start cutting it down. Potential harmful land uses, so downspouts. You know, again, talking about rain that we have in Hawaii, it's not like the rain that I'm used to in London, that gentle all-day rain that slowly percolates down into the soil. No, when it rains here, it just comes straight down. So it hits the roof, it goes down the downspout. I've seen it result 5-6 foot jet coming from the bottom of the downspout straight out. What does that do? It damages all the plants around it and causes these washouts. So how can you capture all of that on your site as well? You know, this is all part of that site analysis. You've also got a great roof expanse, which is collecting all kinds of various different bits of debris. I put down bird poop, but I know as well for us, rat poop. You know, roof rats are a thing here in Hawaii, so all of that material is coming down, and it will slowly work its way into the ocean, polluting our marine environments too. I'm just seeing Jill's face. She's like, yeah. But, you know, Alex brought up about spilling of fuels when we're refueling our lawnmowers. That rain washes it straight down, and then it starts channeling into certain areas. So how can we try and reduce that runoff as well? Yeah, and it washes out banks, causes all kinds of issues with erosion, which then we have to come back through as landscape maintenance and try and fix and restore and repair and try and reduce it happening again. Next one. So this was a school in Oahu somewhere. I forgot the name of it. I do apologize. But you can see they've introduced rain gardens into their design. So it captures that water, allows it to percolate down into the soil. When you go to the mainland, particularly Chesapeake Bay and the Great Lakes, a lot of times they do not allow any water to get into the storm drains from residential places. You have to deal with your own property's water on your property. So impermeable driveways that allow the water to soak down into the ground. These catchment areas. Now, I know a lot of people have probably had experience with rain gardens. You go through periods of drought and the rain garden looks, and then you go through periods of heavy rain and they look fantastic again. So you're gonna have to try and design to make them look good at any time. Next one, please. Residential runoffs. Now, I do apologize if you happen to own this house in McKenna. I pulled these off of a real estate listing, and I thought, okay, this is a great picture to talk about it. Sloping lawns, even at 15%. Sloping lawns only absorb 15% of rainfall. We often think, oh, lawns are great. They're going to allow that water to percolate down into the soil. They don't. They just shed straight off. Remember I talked about the tree will hold a lot of moisture or rainfall in its canopy and slowly drip it down after a rain event. Lawns, opposite. It just sheds it straight off. So they call it green concrete. It's for a reason. So again, if you are planning these big, immense lawns, maybe not the best idea in terms of what you can do. You've also got a lot of fertilizers. Alex brought this up earlier that you're putting down on your lawn. Maybe you've got someone that's really maniacal with their lawn and they don't want any weeds in it, so they're also putting down weed killers, pre-emergence, all kinds of things. All of that gets washed straight off into the ocean during a heavy rain. So lawns aren't necessarily the best thing. So design to absorb all surface water as much as you can. You want to capture that so it goes down into our soils and benefits everything that way. Next one, please. Same house, sorry again, if you are this property's owner. Large roof areas. Again, all that water is hitting that roof, going down into the downspouts. You can kind of see where the downspouts are. And then it's shedding straight off the lawn, straight into areas we don't want it to go. I always love this saying here, which I learned during the NOFA classes. Is it eco-landscaping or ego-landscaping? Who is it really benefiting at the end of the day? Sometimes we have to change the mindset of the client. Yes, they want to display their wealth. Look at me, I have these green vistas of lawn heading up to this big impressive house, but it's not necessarily the right thing. You've got this driveway, which is again just shedding water off, washing all of the pollutants from your vehicles, whether it's gasoline, oil. You could have a coolant leak from your radiator. So again, that's all sitting on the driveway just waiting to be washed off into the ocean. So figure out ways that you can capture it, percolate it down, and prevent it from getting into the water. Next one, please. So design idea considerations. You're going to be covering a lot of this in your course. Normally, site analysis is the very first one. It's the introduction into all of what's being discussed, but sadly, ferries weren't cooperative during this thing, so I have to be right in the middle of the first day. Next slide. Sustainability. How well was it designed and how well will it stay? Dan Kiley, very, very famous landscape architect, he installed a beautiful garden in Tampa. After 10 years, the whole thing was falling apart. It looked great on paper and it looked great when it was installed, but it just didn't survive the longevity. And I think since it's actually been ripped out and redone. So always design for the future. Think about how things are going to look 10 years, 20 years from now. Don't use high maintenance plants. We're going to touch a little bit more on this as we go through. And then, high maintenance plants, well, they require a lot more stuff to go in. Heliconias, you're standing there with your hose, watering them, making sure they look good. And then you get a big gust of wind, the leaves all shred, and then you're having to cut them all down and encourage the young stuff to come up. These are all high maintenance inputs that you want to avoid as much as possible. Next one. So unsustainable, who knows this one? Stromananthes, tricolor. Oh, my ownership group loves it. They think it's a great plant. To me, oh God, it's like Goldilocks. You give it too much water, it dies. You give it too little water, it dies. It's impossible. So we do have it in a few pocket areas, but we don't use it in mass like I'm sure our ownership wants. So look out for those types of plants which are going to require a lot more maintenance for you. You want to divert your time to other more meaningful things instead of trying to coddle these things along. And then how many times have we seen this? Big parking lots, solid impervious paving over the top, and the tree is just struggling. And then when the tree struggles, it starts attracting in pest problems, boars, doesn't matter what it is. So a good healthy tree isn't going to have as many pest or disease problems, but this isn't the situation for it. You do want to cool down the parking lot, but give it some more room. Allow those roots to creep out. Don't be sectioning them off and thinking they're going to be very, very happy. They're not. They're just going to look like an eyesore and eventually will be cut down. Next one. Safeguard biological cycles, definitely important for us in Hawaii. We are known as the extinction capital of the world. Yes, you come to a little bit of paradise, but we're losing so much. I was reading on the ferry as I was coming over, 95 out of 142 endemic species of birds have gone. That's sad. We're telling people to come to Hawaii, this is paradise reborn. No, this is the end of the road for a lot of things that were here before us. Honey creepers are especially endangered. They're losing a lot of their habitat, a lot of the plants that they rely on to feed. So again, can we introduce those into the landscape? The plants that they're going to feed off of. We got the king Kamehameha butterfly. I know everyone kind of goes crazy about the monarch butterflies. That's our butterfly. There's only 2 butterflies in Hawaii that are native. It's the koa blue and the king Kamehameha. So we have native nettles, mamaki, that you can plant in landscapes and hopefully you can attract them in. Now, admittedly, these are more upcountry species. So again, for coastal areas, it's going to be hard providing habitats for the native wildlife down here, but we can do a lot for the ocean in terms of what the guests in our resorts are going to swim out and see. So think about how you can tie some of those plants in. Next one. All right, so this guy, Doug Tamerley, I've been at one of his presentations, and I tell you, was I brainwashed when I left or what? I loved him. He came in with a passion and excitement for what he was doing. It was unbelievable. So he's written 2 books, Bring Nature Home, which was fantastic. He talked about his own garden in Pennsylvania. He introduced a lot of native plants right back in. And what happened? The native fauna came back in as well. He started to see how important the trees were that produced the fruits, and then the bird life that came in to feed from them. The insects, you know, we only have 2 butterflies, but we have plenty of moths. Native moths. So provide food and habitat locations for them as well. His follow-up book, equally as good, a little bit more scientific. I would always start with Bringing Nature Home first, and then see how you can adapt that to put it into your own landscapes, whether it's at the resort or your own properties. He also started up this homegrown national park, which is a fantastic idea. If we all had native plants in our backyards, you could create these corridors, green corridors, for migrations of animals to go backwards and forwards, not just animals, but insects, and various other things. We could build the biggest national park ever by doing it in our own back gardens if everyone basically adopted that process. So look at it from a community standpoint. You know, if you are involved with communities, which quite often we have residences attached to our resorts, how can you go from the resort into those residences that you also maintain? By introducing those plants. Now we've created a big ecosystem which is going to benefit everyone. Next one. So animals always require safe places to eat. If you always notice birds when they come down to a bird feeder, they're uncomfortable around the bird feeder, but they'll often take food back to the shelter of a tree and they'll eat the food there because they know it's a safe place. They're always worried about being predated on, whether it's unfortunately introduced cats, rats, or it could be birds of prey. So they're looking for cover themselves. So always put bird feeders close to trees so that they can have a place to feed there. We have bird feeders now at the Four Seasons, right up against the a tree line along the beach path, and the guests love to stop and look at them. Now I know a lot of those birds are introduced specimens or species, but we do get some which are native as well that come in to feed off of them. You also want somewhere for them to drink. You know, my poor resort at Manelli, we only get 5 to 8 inches of rainfall a year. That's dry. So we have bird baths and various other things for them to feed on. It does mean as well that we have the turkeys all coming in, and they figured out if they jump and hit their heads on the bottom of the bird feeders, they get food dropping on the floor and then they can eat as well. But it's quite funny to watch, these head-butting turkeys jumping up and down. But yeah, definitely provide habitats for the wildlife as well. You might be wanting to get dragonflies close to your ponds. Provide basically branches that dip into the water so that they have a place to land on as they're feeding. So it's those little bits and pieces which you can pick up from Doug's book, as well as plenty of online resources as well that you can tie into your overall design. Next one. So we don't often think about it, but what's underneath our feet? You know, as we're walking out in these landscapes, what is growing there? What's benefiting the plants? It's not just fertilizers and waters and those kinds of things. Mycorrhizal networks, you can kind of see the basic outline of the seedling's roots. Then you have all of these mycorrhizas attaching to it. Now, it's a symbiotic relationship. They are collecting sugars from the plant, but in return, they're also tapping into water supplies, as well as nutrients that the plant might need at the same time. You know, it's not their purpose to kill the plants, they're feeding on it. But if the plant says, oh, I'm really craving some magnesium today, trust me, that fungi that's under there is pulling it from the soil because it knows it's already connected, it's become one with that particular plant. So we always want to try and save those areas. So digging or tilling or disturbing the soil does have an impact with the mycorrhizal, so reduce it as much as possible. And remember the organic mindset first, do no harm. So as much as possible, don't dig up things or till the soil. That was an old school thought. I know my grandfather always used to say, you know, when he was a little boy, he would sit on the front step of his house and they'd watch the horse and carts go by. What would he do? He'd pick up the manures from the horses and put it into the landscape. He didn't go down the road and get a bag of synthetic fertilizer. But, you know, these mycorrhizal are the things that are feeding the plants. So that's how that nutrition is going in. Synthetic fertilizers being chemically based and quite often used in various types of petroleums to produce will actually kill off a lot of these. I don't know if you've ever tried it. When it's hard to believe, I actually signed up for an Ironman back in 2019. I was a little thinner then. But my wife used to get me magnesium that she would dilute in water and you'd rub it on your legs. It stung, but it was a good way to just prevent your muscles from seizing up. But if you think about those fertilizers, the synthetic fertilizers that you put in on the ground, it burns those mycorrhizae. So you actually lose a lot of it. So going completely organic is a really excellent way of going about it. Next one, please. So teaming with microbes, if you haven't read this book, another great one. You'll finish reading that book and you think you've got all the answers in the world afterwards. It's quite interesting, just how much they go into the details, all the different types. There's definitely funguses which will come out and attack pests, nematodes, for example. And they actually show a picture within the book of a fungus that has managed to wrap itself around a nematode. So it can't do any more damage to the root systems of the plants. So there's a lot that's happening underneath our feet that we need to be aware of, particularly when we are breaking new ground or working in existing locations. How can we benefit them? Next one. So I know, Alex, you kind of covered this as well. Think about right plant, right place, what its purpose is and how it's going to impact the actual property that you're working on. You can see the wrong trees in the wrong locations, too close to power lines. Utility companies will come through there, do all of their chopping, then it looks ugly. It might have been a great tree when it was young and they put it right underneath and you thought great, but then as it gets bigger they have to do a lot of maintenance. You can also see the north arrow right here. That building's not getting any sunlight in the winters. Now I know we're in Hawaii, but it's always something we've always got to keep in mind. You want to protect the southwest side of buildings from that extreme heat in the afternoon to sunset. So it reduces your energy costs and everything else. Are they specialists or generalists? And then look for clues as to what to plant where. Next one. All right, so I always get people asking me, how do I know what plant will work in my location? You get it all the time probably as people in the trades. I want to grow something, but I just don't know how it will do in my location. What I tell people is, get a dog. Now the dog doesn't have the answer, but when you go walking around your neighborhood and you've got a dog and the dog stops and sniffs and does whatever dogs do down there, it gives you an opportunity to look around and see other people's gardens, see other people's sites. If you didn't have a dog and you're just standing there, before you know it, the police are right on you. So it gives you a good opportunity just to have a nosy around, see what other people are growing successfully, what works for them, and can I introduce it into my own garden? Next one. Principles of ecology, I kind of skip over this, but this is again, making sure you got the right plant in the right place. You can see the different zones, how much rainfall that you're going to get, what plants are going to grow in those zones. For us, it's basically a case of looking at how much rainfall. I've already mentioned my resort, Manelli, gets 5 to 8 inches of rain a year. The other resort that I manage up at Koele, we get 30 to 40 inches of rain a year. Big difference. And we're only a small island. So understanding what plants are going to grow well in those particular locations is half the battle. So xeriscaping, finding those plants that don't mind drought, more succulent plants. The downside, being in resort worlds, we often have ownership that says it doesn't look Hawaiian. I want heliconias, gingers, you know, the big leafy things. They're trying to tell a story with the resort. They don't want to have something that looks like a desert landscape out front. But it's up to us to try and blend those together in some way. You know, you might have a ground cover of ice plants, succulent plants, and then have some of the more leafy things close by, as long as it doesn't get impacted too much with the irrigation for the greedy plants. Next one. So Dr. Alex Shigo, he came up with a whole bunch of great little sayings. So this is one: plants can't move, they endure or die. This is a classic picture of how a road came along and the tree was in the wrong place, but they just decided, well, let's just build the road around the tree. We see this so many times. The tree might have been in the field initially, and then someone's come along and put in a pathway or something, and then it starts suffering. So always keep in mind, the plant can't escape. It's up to us to make sure that it is still looked after and cared for in some shape or form. Next one. Fat and lean soils. Oh God, gunnera. I know you guys can't grow it here in Hawaii. The amount of times that I've been asked when I lived in the mainland, I want gunnera. It's a prehistoric looking plant, big leafy stems, but it needs a lot of water and it needs very deep, rich soils. Even in Virginia where I worked, we could not grow this thing. So it's an impossible plant unless you live in the Pacific Northwest to grow. In England, no problem. We got the rainfall, we got the deep soil, that's okay. But yeah, it's funny how people get this blinkered vision that this is what they want. But it's up to us to kind of sway them away. But don't fatten the soil unless it's absolutely necessary. Don't bring in that compost and try and enrich the soil, because eventually that compost will fade out and then the plant has to pot up with what the soil was before, as much as we try and intervene and make it better. Choose plants which are going to enjoy the soil conditions and the site conditions as much as possible. Again, it's the right plant, right place mentality. So always keep that in mind. Lean soils, plants require poor, sometimes dry soils cannot survive in fat soils. So you can't take, like I mentioned, the gunnera and stick it in our soil because it's not going to survive. But if you over enrich it, then you're just causing more work for yourself. So again, choose right plant, right place. I know it's repetitive, but hopefully it starts sticking in there. Erosion-prone soils. Pretty much this is what we're faced with down here. How can we stop all that runoff from entering into the ocean? I know that I've bitten off more than I can chew by taking on this new job. I'm actually leaving the Four Seasons by the end of the month and going over to Palama Lanai, which is an island management company. But one of the challenges that I'm going to be faced with is how can we get rid of all the kiawe, introduce filtering plants that stop the runoff into the ocean? There's going to be setting up nurseries to grow the plants, plugging them in. How can we get them to grow? All of those things. Kiawe is the worst thing that you can have next to an ocean because all the understory plants die off. And then when you get the heavy rain, chocolate water. That's what you're left with. And it takes a long time for that sediment to clear out. And that impacts obviously your reefs, your fish, all kinds of things. And the amount of times I've walked those beaches and you see dead sea urchins washing up, sea cucumbers. This is food for other marine life, but it can't move out of the way fast enough and ends up choking within that soil. So again, look at plants which are going to reduce that. We got Napaka over there, great plant for coastal environments, doesn't mind the salty water sprays, does extremely well, doesn't mind sandy soils. Look for those coastal plants. Again, right plant, right place, being popped back in. I know that this is an introduced plant, but Velvetia grass, great plant for erosion control. That might have to be something that I'll start leaning on as we start looking at removing some of the kiawe areas next to gulches. We want to have that filtration bed that stops that sediment from washing straight down. So again, start planning out. It could be pili grass if you're looking for natives. We've got the plants, we just have to use them. Next one. All right, why native plants? You can use exotics, non-natives, but native plants have evolved in the conditions that we're trying to work with. They already have that as part of their DNA. They know already what's involved. So they are genetically adapted to thrive in their niche habitats. They look natural in their surroundings. I mean, how many times you've looked at that rocky, grassy hillside and then someone's planted a heliconia right there. It's like, it doesn't quite fit. Stands out like a sore thumb. Also, you don't have to put as much care into them to keep them going. They've evolved with native fauna to provide that food, shelter, and habitat. Remember, we just touched on the honey creepers and the king kamehameha butterflies. You know, if we take out all of the native plants and we just put introduced, you're not going to have an ecosystem that's living off of it. So try and blend as much as you can, because you want to introduce that other element into the garden. Static gardens are kind of boring, but songbirds, insects, moths, butterflies, that's where it gets exciting. Native plants are well adapted, and they live on in spite of all the hardships, which is definitely a key one. I've lost my assistant. She's ran away. But yeah, it doesn't matter what you throw at them. Where, you know, they are used to those seasonal droughts that come by. And then they're also used to higher rainfall because they've lived in that situation for so long. All right, so what can we learn from existing landscapes? Obviously, you look at the plant material that's doing well, and that will often tell you what the conditions are like. So in this picture, I'll skip over most of the writing, we can all read, but you can see we got begonias, we got tree ferns. It's telling us that it's a wet location. So now we can start choosing a palette of material which is going to thrive in that situation. Last thing you're going to do probably in this type of situation, I'm just going to use Pohinahina as an example, because I know we've done it up Kweli. We think Pohinahina does well, but it starts getting fungal leaf spots whenever we have periods of heavy rain. It's better off in coastal situations. So take a look, see what does well in those areas. I will say as well, this last little comment here, allelopathic plants. So strawberry guava, lemongrass, lantana. They produce a compound in their roots that prevents competition from other plants. So if you have a big stand of strawberry guava and you clean it all out to make a garden, guess what? Those plants aren't really going to take off and thrive as much as they would on virgin soils. There's that compound that stops that competition. Fortunately, you've already had the biochar talk, but introducing biochar is a good way of cleaning the soils. I use an example from the mainland. Black walnut was one. Great tree, unless you're cutting the grass underneath it and you get those walnuts drop out. It hurts, trust me. But nothing would grow underneath a black walnut tree. So again, when you remove them, it's a series of years before you can really get plant material to grow back in. So be careful with some of those plants, lantana particularly, when you are clearing out areas, and just remember you've got to add the biochar in to clean up and make the soil healthy again. Next one. Are we good on time? Am I talking too fast? All right, awesome. Invasive plants, fireweed. We all know fireweed and lantana. It sure looks pretty on Lanai when it's in flower. You drive through the Palawai Basin up to Lanai City at certain times of year, which right now it's actually beginning to look good. But boy, it's incredibly hard to try and control. So try and control them as best you can. Check for the presence and the extent of invasive plants. Invasive plants should be properly removed whenever possible. They can be managed as a last result, but try and remove them as best you can. So fireweed, I know, for example, if you have bare soil, fireweed is like the pioneer plant that comes straight in. It'll take over those areas. So a good example, when we were cutting the grass in the Palawai Basin, they would use the string trimmers around the fence posts. Unfortunately, they scalped the grass, fireweed would move in and start taking over. So we didn't need the fence in Palawai Basin, so they pulled it out. Now, yeah, there's still fireweed, but not as much. It is being controlled as best that we can. But you know, keep that in mind that if you do have bare ground, something will move in, typically an invasive. So getting it planted or covered with mulch is going to be the first priority to try and control all of those invasive plants. Next one. Look for evidence of insects, diseases, or improper cultural conditions. You should all be educated to see what's happening here, yeah? Yeah, well, is it? That's always the thing. We have issues down on our resort which look just like that. And every year I get someone from the state going, well, you need to check your trees. We have climbers go up 3 times a year, never find any evidence of CRB. But again, these plants are telling you all different kinds of things, so look at your existing landscape to see what's there. And be sure to identify the problem straight away. So with this one, boron deficiency. Boron's a funny micronutrient. So It will cause frond mutations, particularly in coconuts. It creates diamond patterns. It'll also create where the spear of the palm tree starts curving. It's not going bullet straight anymore, or they don't open up as properly. Manganese is one that does cause some issues, as well as magnesium. If we can go to the next one, I'll show you a couple more. So the top left-hand one, potassium deficiency, particularly in palms. Palms are great indicator plants. They let you know what your soil conditions are before you've even sent your sample off for soil testing. But potassium will show up as flecks of yellow within the frond. So that gives you an indication. Now, fortunately, I know from my island, potassium's not an issue. But look around on your own areas to see if it is something that's hitting you. This one could be nitrogen deficiency, could be also iron deficiency, high pH. That really restricts how the plants can absorb certain nutrients. Down here, we've got magnesium deficiency. Can be confused with iron deficiency, but you look for the green veins with the yellow outside. That's often a magnesium deficiency. Pretty simple to pot right. There are organic fertilizers which you can pot into the soil to correct all of these. And then this one is manganese deficiency, often called bristletop. I believe it's called bristletop disorder. It's where, again, the fronds aren't really coming out the way they should. It just starts looking stunted. Can also be a boron deficiency. Now, I will say, if you have boron issues with your palms, don't go out and dump a bunch of boron straight on it, because that can kill the plant if it's overdone. It's better to do small amounts monthly and slowly build the plant back up again. Another technique that I have also discovered is boron, the way that cation exchanges happen. This is the part of the class when I was in school that I was like, oh my God, what are they getting into? But cation exchange is about positive and negative ions. So boron needs to attach onto calcium for it to easily absorb into the plant material. So just knowing how some of those nutrients work and what other things you might need to introduce. So careful with the calcium as well, because on Lanai we have very high calcium. We also have a high alkalinity. So what's happening is that calcium is not being released from the soil for the plant to absorb. So what we have to do is we put compost on the ground. And then that basically acidifies the soil as it breaks down, allows the calcium to start dissolving and the plant to use it as a useful micronutrient. So that's a part of site analysis that you didn't think you'd be learning today. Next one. So nature is the master designer. Draw inspiration all the time from the designs from native plant communities. So again, look what's growing out in the wild. You know, whether it's the morning glories, the pohinehinas, akeas, things like that. See how they work in relationship to each other. Then replicate the same kind of plantings in someone's backyard or in the resorts. Next one, please. We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier about wind flow. Using plants to disrupt or diffuse how the wind moves across your property for the benefit of us as well, but it also allows the plants to grow and thrive as well. So just breaking it up, you can see here how it's just diffused by a tree and then it bounces across the roofs, keeps all the buildings nice and cool, and then reduces the temperatures, makes areas a lot more less hostile, shall we say. Next one, please. Simple one of hedges. You know, if you build a solid wall, what you're creating is an eddy right behind it. So the wind can really whip up and cause some damage on the opposite side. So you can diffuse by planting green material instead of having a fence, or you can stagger your plantings, so then it just redirects the winds into different areas. We do get a lot of wind exposure, and thank heavens for the trade winds, but something to always keep in mind, particularly if you're having problems with trying to get plants to grow. You know, you might need to create a wind break or a wind buffer. Next one. Assets or limitations. You know, we kind of talked about the rain gardens and swales and things like that. It doesn't just have to be a simple swale. Turn it into a dry creek bed. Plant up the sides, make it look pretty. You know, embrace it, it's an asset. It might have been a problem at the very beginning, but you can actually make it into a feature, and then everyone will love it. So work with all the existing conditions will result in less disturbance as well. You know, if you're working with that swale and you go, okay, I don't want the swale there, but make it into a dry creek bed, it looks nice. or you end up having to dig another swale somewhere else to divert the water and not necessarily deal with the issue on your own site. And there's always native plants for every growing condition. Always keep that in mind. When do you have your native plant talk? Is that tomorrow? Okay, so you'll go into a lot more details then. I don't want to spoil it. Next one, please. Topography. God, I mean, we love looking at pictures of rice paddies. They look so nice when they're contoured and it looks all nice and green. But this is where you're disturbing what was there before, how the water moved through the site, all the mycorrhizals. So do not get that bulldozer mentality. My right-hand man up at Coeli loves his excavator and the amount of times I have to pull him off. But here, just start digging and digging and digging. He loves that piece of equipment. So again, we're going to try and steer away from that and embrace everything that we have already. Work within the constraints of the existing conditions. It's pretty simple. It's going to be less work on you if you embrace what's there. And then the plants are going to enjoy it because you haven't disturbed the soil so much. All right. Bioremediation and contaminants. Now this is kind of an exciting field that we're beginning to get into. There's a lot more talk about how various fungi can actually benefit us. I use a fungus to spray lawns to prevent dollar spot. It sort of sounds counterproductive, but if you put a healthy fungus, a beneficial one, it will outcompete the negative one for space. So you can use these funguses as various things. The exciting thing is that they are beginning to find out what types of fungus will break down heavy contaminants. Now, lanai, and I'm sure it's the same here on Maui, when the pineapples were everywhere, they put down all those sheets of black plastic to work as a weed barrier, also trap in moisture in the soil so they didn't have to water as much. But once they finished the pineapples, they just plowed it into the soil. So now we've got bits of black plastic sticking up everywhere. And on a windy day, where does that all end up? Straight in the ocean. So again, if eventually, and this is the long-term goal, if they can come up with a fungus that we can apply to the soil that will start breaking down that black plastic, it will reduce the need for us to try and mechanically remove it, whether by hand or tool, but it will actually get down. So Paul Stamos right here, only two things can break down hydrocarbons, which is oil, gasoline, and pesticides. Nuclear fission, where you superheat it, will break down all of that stuff. And trust me, when we went through this process initially, I spent $13,000 shipping all of our chemicals that we weren't going to use anymore to a certified place where they could dispose of it through high heat. And it had to go all the way to Oregon. So that was a lot of paperwork that all had to be signed to put them on boats and everything else. So that's why it costs so much to get done. But the only other thing is mushrooms, because there is those fungi out there that are specialized to do that. Now, as we perfect and improve our technology and knowledge of it, these should hopefully be coming online a lot more. Next one, please. So remember that every land use decision we make will have a positive or negative effect on the land. And in this case, what we're learning about is the ocean. We don't want anything that we put on the ground affecting what's happening down there. So keep all of that in mind. It's up to us at the end of the day. All right, I think this is the last slide. Yes, here we go. 9 years I've worked at the Four Seasons, which is right back here. I've never seen a monk seal on the beach. We've never had a monk seal, according to some of the old timers, anywhere on Hulapoi Beach. Now, I've got no scientific evidence to back up this. It's just purely anecdotal and gut feeling. But I think because we've gone organic up here, our friend down here has decided to come sleep on the beach. That was sunrise and sunset. He spent the whole day there, which is really kind of cool. The bit you don't see in the picture is we got the Four Seasons lounges right there. Trust me, he wasn't bothered at all. He didn't mind. We didn't put out any signs or ribbons like you do, well, you have to here, unfortunately, in Maui, because at the other end of Hulapoi Bay is where all the day trippers come from Trilogy. If we had put that out, it would have been a big flag. Hey, come over here, check this out. He was left to basically sleep all day and wasn't disturbed at all. But it is my feeling that because we've changed what we do up here, we're bringing back those animals back into our ecosystem. So go back, look at your own spaces, see what you can do, because we're only here for a short period of time in our lives, but we have to hand it over to someone else. We want to make the world a much better place. And we do have the ability as landscapers, gardeners, to make those changes, to encourage this to happen. All right, I got one more, very simple one. How do you find me? I'm on Lanai. I can't go anywhere. We've only got 30 miles of paved road, so it's easier to find me. But thebritishgardener.com was a website that I'd set up, mostly during COVID, because there wasn't anything to do. So I cataloged all of our plant collections that we have at the Four Seasons. So I've got a big list there. The British Gardener on Facebook and also Instagram at #RobWoodman. I try and post almost every day. So there's always pictures of what's happening on Lanai as well as what's in flower at the resorts. I do that because, again, I do garden tours with our guests. It's a way to extend that garden tour and make them think about things later on. So you can have a reach outside of what you're doing by doing things like this, by utilizing social media to promote, particularly what the Maui Nui Marine Council are doing. And that is it. I'm probably too early, aren't I?
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Questions, yeah.
All right, any questions?
You have like full to use my house for your.
You might have a monk seal living at the bottom of it by the end of it. But yeah, I mean, we can do so much, and we just got to make the first start. I will say, when Jill first approached me about switching the landscape over, it seemed like a big job. But one of the main reasons for getting rid of all the chemicals is that my staff have to handle them. It's one thing for me to say, go out there and spray Roundup, but I also know Roundup causes cancer. I don't want them to have a health issue later on in life. It will affect my conscience. So it was easy for me to just get rid of all of that and then embrace the soaps, the oils, the vinegar as a weed killer is a great one to use. And I'm sure you're covering some of that during the calls. But I can sleep easy at night knowing that no one's going to be affected by having some kind of chemical there. So it's an easy step. I don't have to worry about OSHA springing a surprise visit and going, well, this isn't stored properly, $10,000 fine. And then on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. It saves the company a lot of money. The other thing with people in resorts, I'm sure that you've began to see it, your bonuses now, your performance bonuses, you got to reduce your water consumption by 3%. How do you do that? It's like, okay, now you got to start using mulches. As the mulch breaks down, it's enriching the soil. It's allowing that moisture to hold into that. You then don't want the runoff from the rain to go straight into a gulch and then into the ocean. You want to start using it for your own landscape. So you're going to be creative in terms of how you're going to get your bonus at the end of the year. So we are slowly being pushed into it. Unfortunately, Jill and her program definitely gets us to that point a lot quicker. I will say one other thing about, again, it's anecdotal. I've got no evidence to back it up, but when we stopped using synthetic fertilizer, no whitefly. We had no whitefly anywhere on the property. I used to have whitefly on my plumeria trees, and it looked like snow. And when the plumeria trees are over the swimming pools, you can't stand there with chemicals and spray them. So it definitely became a problem. But as soon as I got rid of it, I got rid of all the whitefly. So the only thing I can think is that you make the plants more tasty for the pests when you start feeding them with synthetic fertilizers. And it could also be the plants are a little bit more stressed because they're having their roots burnt or the mycorrhizal isn't working the way it should. So again, it's a knock-on effect. You'll start noticing these little changes. Also, we weren't spraying around with all kinds of chemicals, so we had beneficial insects, praying mantis, lizards, spiders, all coming back onto the property, which then help control your pest problems. So again, even though it felt like I was stepping off of a ledge to go organic, no, it was actually the best thing we've ever done. So embrace it, try and take your properties into that new world, and hopefully we can make a big difference to where we all go fishing and swimming on the weekend. All right, thank you.